Taylor goes 101.
So then we have an upset here right off the bat with Jonathan Taylor at the 101 in the Superflex draft, and then we see our expected QBs go in the next couple picks.
Yeah, Allen, Herbert, and Mahomes, followed by a timeout that was Lamar Jackson with the next 4 picks. And then we get Burrow, Jalen Hurts, and Russell Wilson before Kyler, and we're sitting here at 11. We're hoping for guys like Hurts and Wilson to be there. Now Kupp goes 9. This is what happens to us every time we get the 11th pick. Kyler Murray is going to fall all the way to 10, and we are not going to be able to. And he went 10. Welcome to 2022 drafting with stealing bananas.
So then we have 50 seconds here. Christian McCaffrey still available. Dak Prescott, Tom Brady, Matthew Stafford, the top QBs. I don't know that any of those guys get me that excited. We know from the Roster Construction Explorer that taking your second QB in round 2, which would require us to take our first one here, is a very high win rate play. Do we want to start off the draft season by kind of swinging for the fences? What's your sense here? Who do you really want? I mean, the flip side of it is we can take McCaffrey and then come back around with Chase or Jefferson. And then, if you hit on your QBs, you feel like you win the whole tournament.
Let's do it. Let's go McCaffrey. I feel a little bit more comfortable than you with Dak. And I would have been fine with Dak there. And even swinging around with like Dak Brady would have been a nice start. And Dak does go at the turn. But I like the McCaffrey start. Dak Brady goes at the turn. So we'll see how that 12 spot builds their roster. They got a pretty nice 2 QB start. This is an incredibly QB heavy draft. I think you have to lean away from that. We could take Aaron Rodgers. We could take Matthew Stafford. I think I would probably take Rodgers over Stafford. But I'm with you. Let's just take McCaffrey Chase. They're not all going to take quarterbacks forever. Why pick into a run?
And the other element here is that Travis Kelce is available, has a higher ADP than both of the 2 wide receivers. Any instinct to take him, or should we go with the excitement of these young guys?
I can understand the case for Kelce, but I think I would go with the excitement of the young guys. I might take Jefferson. Oh, we just went.
We were down to 6 seconds. We do take Chase there. As you mentioned, Jefferson, a very equal pick as we start out. One of the kind of fun things with the tournament element of it is we do get, and it's important not to overestimate these things, overestimate the importance of them, and build a less than optimal team as a result. But Ben, we do have that potential massive shootout week 17 game with the Bills-Bengals.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I was thinking similarly along structural lines when I pivoted to Jefferson very late there, in the sense that I thought it was possible Kirk Cousins can make it back and be our QB1 basically, and we'd have a Cousins-Jefferson stack. Obviously, Chase's quarterback, Burrow, is already off the board. I'm pretty optimistic about Kelce. Even at his age, obviously, feels like there's not as much excitement as there should be that Tyreek Hill's not there, and there's this whole group of other receivers. They're good, but all of them probably warts to a degree. There's a small percent chance, but a chance that Travis Kelce sets a career high in targets this year.
And that would be a lot because he's been a massive target hog. How concerned are you? I mean, it sounds like you're not concerned, but we did do the big show this week on Patrick Mahomes and what his value is in Superflex. I made the case that I thought the Chiefs offense was going to be better because of the variety and volume of receivers, when really before it's just been Hill, Kelce. Do you think guys like Moore and Juju at MVS altogether might actually knock down his target ceiling? Oh,
it certainly could, right? I think my sort of hypothesis on it's a volatile situation. My hypothesis on the ceiling argument would be those guys are good enough to demand some attention. We've talked recently when we were talking about my trade for Patrick Mahomes and MVS and Mecole Hardman in Dynasty, that MVS and Hardman are, these multiple field stretchers. They should schematically create some problems and keep, safeties deep. Mahomes still has a huge arm. It's not going to be the same threat as having Tyreek Hill on the field, but they will still, keep Mahomes honest and not allow him to just throw the ball 70 yards, I'm sure. a lot of the mechanisms that have been there for Kelce to really dominate in the middle of the field should still be there. And if you have the Sky Moore and the Juju and those types of guys that are having a good year, I think that just means that Kelce can't be double teamed too much. So I think there's, he has an edge over everyone else on the field in terms of familiarity with Mahomes, except Hardman, who may not be familiar with Mahomes either. And he has, I think, an edge on talent, but then those guys are good enough probably that it's not like teams are going to just double Kelce all game long. So, I mean, I think there's various ways it could play out. He could certainly lose targets based on a more spread attack that's not so condensed onto two players. I'm just saying, I think there's a small chance that he just becomes even more of the go-to guy.
And so we're wrapping back around. Anyone who's watching on the YouTube version can see sort of how the draft is developing here with the board, but we have lost the vast majority of the quarterbacks. Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence go in the middle of round 3. Justin Fields still there. Tua is drafted. That's maybe not looking great for us in terms of Fields getting back either, but Kyle Pitts still available, DeAndre Swift, Darren Waller. Again, one of the things that you mentioned is we can sort of aggressively go against this QB run. We do have some guys we like in the middle. We know that the numbers don't necessarily back that up, but one of the things that you mentioned before the show that you really wanted to do, and again, this kind of goes back to our pre-draft theory on some of these rookie QBs. Now that Corral and Ritter are into places where they could play, it knocks their prices down, right? It keeps them very inexpensive, and we have a shot to take 2 of the young guys very, very late and have a 4 QB build, especially now that this format has added the round 19 and 20 back in. So, all right.
So we did get Justin Fields to fall to us, and Lamb and Fournette go at the turn, and we're back on the clock at 4:02. And in the queue, you have Darren Waller, George Kittle, TJ Hawkinson. You still like the value that a elite tight end could bring us here?
Yeah, I think that's a strong option. We also have Javonte Williams and Saquon Barkley, so we could get that second running back to go with CMC if we want. The other player I was really wanting there was CeeDee Lamb, but he does go. Debo and Tyreek Hill would be the next options. Who do you like here?
I think we should go tight end, largely because we're going to be thin at quarterback already and need to kind of chase quarterback. And I don't like chasing 2 positions. So I want this to be a 1 running back build with McCaffrey. We know we can build out running back late and do a solid anchor quarterback build. There's good running back value there. We certainly could have taken another receiver, a Debo type there, and had Chase Debo. It would have been a really nice structure. But to get a strong tight end, I think keeps us flexible to the various spots where we might decide that we need to go quarterback, because there's already 20 quarterbacks gone now.
And the QBs we pass up there that would be the most obvious are Ryan Tannehill and Matt Ryan. So certainly Darren Waller on paper is a better pick there, but at some point you have to take quarterbacks is the unfortunate thing. We came into this planning to take a quarterback in round 1 and a quarterback in round 2, and here we are. And where we are is a very fun place. Mac Jones, someone who's going quite a bit later, I think fits very nicely with this. They've added Devontae Parker. They've added Tyquan Thornton. He had decent results in his rookie year with not much in the way of weapons. We'll kind of see how long we can play chicken and still get him.
They Daniel had Jacoby Myers and Kendrick Bourne.
Exactly.
And both of our favorite players.
So we'll see if those guys come back. Daniel Jones, another player, I think, with the potential rushing upside and the far better coaching situation. He also becomes sort of interesting with Wan'Dale Robinson late. And then if we're really gutsy with it, we could try and get Jared Goff at the 7-8 turn, although his ADP is before that. If you wait there and miss, obviously you're going to be in pretty dire straits. Javonte Williams still on the board late in the 4th. I'm seeing him fall in a lot of the drafts that I'm doing right now.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about him because the few times that we've touched on him, it sounded like you've been a little bit concerned about Melvin Gordon. When Gordon came back so late and right before the draft, I wrote in Stealing Signals that I was almost not concerned at all. That I even hypothesized that it could have been a case where Denver was sort of like, yeah, feel free. I mean, they certainly were fine letting him walk if he could have got a multi-year deal, which he was looking for. But they may have said to him before the draft, if you're not back on the roster, there's a very real possibility that we'll draft another running back. Because I couldn't really come up with another reason why Gordon would sign a couple days before the draft and not continue to wait. He's already waited that long, and see if any team didn't hit on their running back targets and then might be willing to meet his contract demands. Regardless, Denver certainly, new coaching staff and all of that, and certainly made the decision to allow Gordon to test the market for a long period of time. And it reminds me a little bit of Christian McCaffrey's second year, frankly, when Jonathan Stewart got released, but then they brought in CJ Anderson in May, right? They brought Gordon back. He was with the team last year, but it's a new coaching staff. They brought in a player well into free agency. It was not a priority for Carolina going into year 2 for McCaffrey. It was not a priority for Denver with Gordon. And Anderson barely played for the Panthers. He had like a 9th round ADP that year. Everyone thought he would take the Jonathan Stewart role, and McCaffrey wouldn't be a 3-down back. Not everyone, but there were certainly people who believed that. Anderson eventually was cut. He went on to be very good for the Rams late that year after Todd Gurley got hurt. Still could play. Like, people have said that Melvin Gordon can still play. I think he can too. But I feel like the Broncos have tipped their hand a little bit. He does go off the board here at 503. But I'm curious your thoughts. Are you pretty concerned about Gordon's impact on Williams' ceiling?
Well, only from the perspective that he goes from a potential, top 4 overall pick to now a player that I think in, non-Superflex, you're looking more in the early second. But it's in the early second with the perspective of, the ceiling there is still sky high. So adding him to a Superflex roster here at the 503, that's a crazy value. One of the things, unfortunately, that has happened in this draft is that we do have several teams who have already taken 3 QBs, including the team that appears to be on auto draft. So that auto draft is something we'll have to watch out for, because it is going to throw off the dynamics. Just to give a feel, that team now has 3 quarterbacks and 2 tight ends. Almost certainly not the way they'd be doing it if they were drafting. Although one of the things we do see with some of these auto pick teams is they can turn out to be pretty good. But Jared Goff in the middle of round 5, Mac Jones in the middle of round 5, neither of those players are going to make it back to us. And there are actually, there's another team here with only 1 QB. I would expect this to be Daniel Jones. How are we looking at the quarterback position now?
Well, the top quarterback by ADP is Carson Wentz, and he's a big favorite of the Stealing Bananas podcast. We are very high on Carson Wentz this year, he said sarcastically. Daniel Jones did go. It's looking gross. We're going to have to be creative.
And the player that is now staring at us here, Ben, is your absolute favorite. We can go with an A.J. Brown, potentially T. Higgins turn. It's going to be a team that in some ways may be drawing dead, but it's going to be a fun team. So
yeah,
we add.
It's drawing dead if we take Carson Wentz as well. So we're better off taking A.J. Brown, I'll tell you that. Maybe we'll hit on, a Desmond Ridder breakout or something. I don't know. But Matt Corral, who knows what we're going to do. But at this point, you can't fix the problem by drafting Carson Wentz. That's a mistake that we see. But this is really a testament to what you were talking about with the roster construction explorer, that the quarterbacks, when you take your second quarterback by round 2, you have a much higher win rate. A lot of that is because if you wait at quarterback, you wind up not having quarterbacks.
So we select A.J. Brown. Some of the other fun names in this range. T. Higgins, we already selected Chase. If we had taken Jefferson, it would have been exciting if Higgins had gotten back, but he doesn't get back anyway. Breece Hall, Jalen Waddle, Cam Akers. J.K. Dobbins, Travis Etienne, all in this area. Do you have a player or position that you're dreaming for right here?
I'd still prefer to be deeper at receiver than running back for the reasons I said before, but we are seeing a lot more value at running back. Oh, Breece Hall does go. I imagine for you it's Dobbins here, but you've just added Jalen Waddle to the queue, and that's the other name that is certainly staring at me.
Yeah, and I think that Waddle is the guy here. It'll give us those 3 elite wide receivers to go with a team that has Fields, McCaffrey, Waller, has those other, sort of onesie-ish positions if we're going to throw the running back position in with that at this point. I think that we will see some running backs that we like fall later. Waddle's someone, because Tyreek Hill is there, he's getting knocked down a little bit. I think that's giving you a better price on this potentially massive second-year breakout. We could be talking about him with that same group of Chase and Jefferson a year from now. I think that you have to make that bet. And so again, we don't have the QBs, but we've got some gunslinging potential approaches to that late in the draft. And so I'm excited for that when it gets there. I have to admit, for a team that has some real problems at the quarterback position, there are also some very fun things about this squad we've built.
Yeah, I mean, everything else is great. It's Superflex, and we're just pretending like it's not, and that's working great for us. Strategically, this was not our plan, right? We're looking at ADP going in. Jalen Hurts and Russell Wilson look like they'd be very real options at 111. They go 107, 108. McCaffrey doesn't go before our pick. He's the 108 in ADP in Superflex. So not crazy to see him fall to 111, but definitely a scenario that sort of forced our hand. And this being our first Superflex draft in quite a while, we didn't exactly have our ducks in a row. Going back or looking back, would you have preferred that we had started like Dak Stafford or Dak Rodgers, and then instead of Fields, I don't know, Debo Waller at that turn? Lamb.
No, I like the way that we did it. You say we weren't prepared for that, but both of those guys were not going to come back anyway. Sort of as you mentioned, Prescott and Brady go at the turn, and so then you're down really another tier. You're going to get a compromise pick in round 1. You're going to have to go down a tier in round 2 or take another position anyway. We talk all the time about the mistake that drafters make at running back, and they're doing it less, but still a mistake as they chase the points from those teams at the top. You're going to set a decent floor, and then you're going to say, okay, we can outdraft people the rest of the way if you make those quarterback selections. The problem is just you're chasing points. You're going to be late in round 3 as well, late in round 5 in terms of where you're drafting compared to the rest of your league and to the field. I think that an extremely unique, ultra risky approach gives us, number one, a better chance to actually do something fun in this specific 12-team league, but also a better chance to do something kind of crazy within the context of the entire tournament. So I like the way it's fallen. Now, my preference would have been for those guys you mentioned, for Jalen Hurts or Russell Wilson to have made it. That would have been far superior. But within the context of what actually did happen, I like this.
It's funny because even with those two going 7 and 8, we have Kyler ranked ahead of them. You are incredibly high on Kyler this year. And I think you've said since they added Marquise Brown that he could be the QB1, right? And so pretty much if we got any draft slot other than 111, we would have started with Kyler Murray.
That's correct. Yes. So, and again, the thing that's great about this, especially early on, is that it allows you to try some different things, to make some mistakes, to see if you can kind of dig out. So we'll be trying to see if we can do that the rest of the way. We're now into the middle of round 7. J.K. Dobbins is still there. Travis Etienne is still there. We had a massive running back run after our pick. So it was Keenan Allen. And then we had 5 consecutive running backs in Ezekiel Elliott, David Montgomery, Cam Akers, Antonio Gibson, Josh Jacobs. I guess I don't necessarily care for the value of those players. And now we're in the middle of a big wide receiver.
That was a nice way of saying that was the running back dead zone. It just showed up in round 6.
So we have Michael Pittman, DK Metcalf, DJ Moore, Terry McLaurin, Dallas Goedert, Chris Godwin, Mike Williams, and Marquise Brown. 7 out of 8 picks here go to the wide receiver. I certainly wouldn't mind if one of our favorite sort of dead zone-ish running backs fall to us at the 7-8 turn.
And yeah, and you're referring to either Dobbins or ETN, right? I mean, we have both of them as options. It would be nice to take one of them. I made the mistake of clicking on the quarterback tab to see who we could potentially pair that running back with. And we're looking, Carson Wentz has gone. We are looking at Davis Mills, Marcus Mariota, Kenny Pickett, Drew Lock. Feeling good about the depth that we're going to build at the quarterback position.
Well, I mean, and again, I mean, we're going to kind of wait and see if we can get lucky with guys falling. But I mean, the option A has to be Marcus Mariota with Desmond Ridder late, right?
Oh, I like that. Taking them both. That's fun. Option A for me, I think looking at this was Pickett, because I do think Pickett starts week 1. I'm not necessarily confident that he's good, but on this build, it's like there's a decent chance he starts 17 games. That's the best I can say. But we are back up. None of our running backs went. So take your pick, J.K. Dobbins or Travis Etienne.
Yeah, I'm going to make an argument for taking both of them, but also very open to taking a receiver instead as we wrap back around.
Let's keep pushing our advantage. I'm with you there. If we can get both of them, let's take them both.
Okay, so we'll start with Dobbins then.
Let's try to make this a super team everywhere else to say for the fact that we're going to be starting, I don't know, Jacoby Brissett.
Well, when it comes down to it in the end, this is just an extension of our rookie QB strategy we've wanted to play all along. So once Sam Howell wins that job in training camp, we're going to be golden.
Sam Howell, the skeleton key for the Superflex Best Ball Tournament. Not actually something we believe, but and ETN goes behind us. This drafter has now taken Dak and Brady at the first turn behind us. We were discussing both on the way back. Lamb at the second turn. You mentioned him. Higgins and Breece Hall at the third turn, the 5-6 turn. And then takes ETN here at the 7-8 turn. Really drafting off our board behind us.
So our options would be Juju, Elijah Moore. Could always go for Amon-Ra. We could make a little bit of a reach and get Gabriel Davis to go with Jamar Chase in the first round. We do have some late options in terms of Tyler Boyd and Jamison Crowder if we're looking to play that game even a little bit more heavily.
What about QB? You don't want to make the Pickett or Mariota pick here. They are the next two best available. We can keep pushing that, but we are in the 8th round. It feels flat elsewhere is my reasoning, but we can do anything else.
So I think the main thing that Ben was wanting here was to get a Seattle Seahawks on the team.
So I asked that late in the clock, and Shawn takes Kenneth Walker.
So now we're
beautiful moment there. Marcus Mariota? No, I'm taking Kenneth. This is the perfect time to sneak Kenneth Walker in. I got nothing else. Oh, that was funny. That was well done. There's a lot of teams that already have 3 QBs. I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4 teams already. We're 5. We're the only team that has 1. Very possible that no QB goes until we draft again.
Yeah, and the good news is that I do believe that the auto draft team is now in there. And again, I mean, the team looks pretty solid. 3 QBs, George Kittle, TJ Hawkinson, Josh Jacobs, Marquise Brown, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. still very much in the mix. But the nice thing is I think we have now less risk that they're going to inadvertently take a fourth QB. So I like that part of it.
Until they get bored because they can't fix this roster in 3 rounds.
It's
not dead. I'm with you. It's not a bad roster. You start Lamar, Trey Lance, Trevor Lawrence. It's not great, but you got 3 QBs. I mean, it's better than our QBs. And
right. I mean, they're looking at our team and say
yeah.
We're in great shape.
Yeah.
So we do have, and I feel pretty good about the Walker pick too, in the context of the next 3 backs are A.J. Dillon, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and Cordero Patterson. I don't know. I mean, Kenneth Walker, one of the reasons why we did not select him in our RotoViz Triflex rookie draft is that we felt like Rashaad Penny was going to be involved there. We actually made the move for Penny. But I guess I like Walker's chances to get the lion's share of the work in Seattle better than I do for the next 4 backs who've been taken.
No comment.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I do agree with you. Although Seattle doesn't know what they're doing. They just think running backs are like worth really high draft picks. But when they took Rashaad Penny, they certainly didn't roll up the red carpet for him. And now
Penny did not play well and did not stay healthy. Kenneth Walker is going to be the new Jamal Charles. So again,
we'll see if he can beat up their former first-round pick, Rashaad Penny.
Right. Jamal Charles didn't have a huge rookie season by any stretch either.
Kenneth Walker's going to be the new Jamal Charles. I'm going to have to get on board with him pretty quick when you say that, because Jamal Charles is, if I'm not mistaken, your favorite running back of all time. I'm a little bit jaded by the fact that the Seahawks decided to draft a running back as high as they did. Not necessarily by Kenneth Walker. I've been very intrigued by his profile throughout. But that's a big comparison coming from you.
Yeah, so now we're looking and thinking, okay, even if we have to play a non-QB in the Superflex, we probably have this draft wrapped up. So if Marcus Mariota is taken, one of the guys I guess I am a little bit surprised still on the board, Elijah Moore goes there at the 903. Gabriel Davis still available. His ADP in this format is at the 8-9 turn, so it's not like he's fallen far below where he normally goes. Ben, fill me in. Has Kenny Pickett gone?
No, Kenny Pickett's still there for the taking. He might stay there for the taking until after we draft. One of the interesting things, you and I were talking a little bit about Devy leagues off the air, that he had a really good receiver who is now transferred and just committed today to USC, I saw. I mean, is that why he was good last year?
Yeah, so you're going to make the case that a little bit like Tua, his receivers in college may actually be better than what he's heading to with the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Well, not necessarily what he's heading to with the Steelers, but it might have masked some flaws at the college level that will, it's always a tough transition, and then they could just be magnified as he moves to the pros. The jury is certainly out on whether or not how good he could be, what his upside truly is.
And one of the things that we do see with him, and one of the red flags we've talked about, is that emergence came really, really late. And it did come with the elite wide receiver there. So, again, he's not the player we necessarily want. Are you going to make the case, if Gabriel Davis is here at the 9-11 and 2 picks, to let Mariota wrap around
Davis? Oh, it's still there. Okay. Yeah, I'm certainly comfortable taking Gabriel Davis there. Especially as you noted, we have the potential Week 17 shootout between the Bengals and the Bills. We took Jamar Chase in the second round. We know Gabriel Davis can show up for a shootout. We saw it in the AFC playoffs last year, and he went 1 pick ahead of us. So why am I even talking? This has been a fun draft. I'm exhausted.
We're less than halfway through. Ben is getting out the towel to try and dry off. We have Mariota here. I don't know that there is any pick that would make us risk him at the turn, there's a decent chance that team will want a third quarterback at some point. We do have our rookie wide receivers right in this range that we like a lot, but I don't know that we necessarily want to pass completely on a QB, and so it makes sense just to go ahead and take Mariota.
Yeah, I think we've kicked that can far enough. It was pretty fantastic that when you took Kenneth Walker completely on your own, not supported by me whatsoever, in the next 2 rounds, no quarterback did go, as we discussed. Traylon Burks goes right behind Mariota. This guy continues to draft off our board. Would not surprise me if he takes Drake London next. I think, Shawn, the pick might be Kenny Pickett right behind this. Just throw volume at the problem.
So you're thinking Pickett. Drake London here would be pretty interesting to go with Marcus Mariota.
Okay.
And
yeah, let's do that.
We are committed to 2 late QBs.
I'm with you. Let's do it. I wasn't thinking of the Mariota London stack. I really like that. Speaking of which, we do have Fields, and for Fields to break out, there's one player in particular that I think you think is going to catch maybe 120 balls if that happened.
Yeah, so as we continue on here, we did get Darren Waller. We have an elite tight end. We're fairly confident that even though his target ceiling may decrease a little bit, the concerns about being triple teamed, as we saw sometimes last year, probably decline. Oh, but unfortunately, Ben, Cole Kmet does go off at the 10:06. He was the player you were talking about. He was going to be one of our options, as we know we do want still at least one more very good tight end, if not 2. And because of some of the other selections we've made, we are starting to run a little bit low at tight end. Our very favorite player, Albert O, is still there. Irv Smith, Tyler Higbee, Hunter Henry, Tanyan, Logan Thomas, Noah Fant, and Njoku.
I'm also a little concerned right now about how do we stack Justin Fields? Because, it's one of those things, if you're going to win a tournament, you don't necessarily have to stack, but we took him in the 3rd round. We're certainly making a commitment there. There could be a lot of rushing in his profile, but one element of him being good enough at that pick, and especially with the rest of our quarterbacks not being particularly good, would be that he would probably have some players catching some touchdowns. And Mooney and Kmet have now gone. And so the concern now becomes, do we have to talk about Velus Jones at some point?
That's where I thought you were going in round 20. I know it will make Pat very happy if we take Jones, in part because the Bears selected him, so they have to pump him up, and in part because they have no one else. The early reviews have been that he looks like an NFL player, which is good because am I wrong that he's like 25 years old?
He's quite a bit older than Justin Fields. He can mentor him and bring him along, so that'll be nice.
But one of the things I do like here, Ben, is to take these rushing QBs because I think that you have more flexibility in a situation where you don't necessarily then have to have the stack, because the player could come through and score the points that you need, help carry you there. We now have 2 rushing QBs. I love that element, even though we did go ahead and select one of Mariota's wide receivers. I think to have those 2 guys there is a lot of fun. It doesn't worry me not to have somebody to go with Justin Fields. I think that part is going to be fine, and it frees us up to not have to worry about that element. We can focus more on something fun like taking Jamison Crowder late.
Definitely my idea of fun. So no love for Equinemius St. Brown. No love for I don't know, who else did the Bears have? Tajay Sharp, Dante Pettis, Byron Pringle, who may or may not play.
Ben is now listing off names that if we were in the classic version, whereas 28 rounds, would
they still wouldn't get drafted.
Well,
they might make a queue.
Right. Round 28 options in that format, which again is not the tournament format, but a fantastic option if you want to draft kickers and defenses. And there's a reason to like that, because if you draft it correctly, you can beat the rest of the people in your league. Check out the FFPC Roster Construction Explorer at RotoViz. It will tell you how to essentially push your win rate into double figures without doing anything other than selecting kickers and defenses properly. That's something Blair Andrews and I were able to use last year to, I don't know, make $500, $600, $700 and get a bunch of these $35 credits that you can use on the Superflex Best Ball Tournament. So just a little plug there for that format. That's a lot of fun since we were talking about drafting in round 28. But back here, another name that I'm looking at, Ben, I know that this actually will get your blood circulating a little bit. That week 17 game with the Atlanta Falcons, where we have Marcus Mariota and Drake London. Their opponent, I believe, is the Arizona Cardinals. Do you have some interest in, I mean, it goes without saying, but Rondale Moore is available?
Yes. Yes, I do. I think that would be a great pick. Alberto's still here. I'm really looking forward to him going one pick before us. But I do think Rondale would be a nice addition to this overall build. Get a little more correlation in there.
The other player who is still available and was the linchpin of your trade with Davis, Geno Smith. Somebody that
we're gonna take Geno and Kenneth Walker in the same draft.
I've heard you say that you think Pete Carroll has this whole thing figured out. Super Bowl champion head coach.
We're barely 3 weeks removed from the draft, Sean. Give me a break with this Geno Smith garbage. Yeah, he's probably the right pick. We know Drew Lock sucks, and they don't have anyone else. Although they could come away with someone else, Baker or Garoppolo. Is the move to take Baker or Garoppolo and assume that they're playing football somewhere? Maybe Deshaun Watson gets suspended for the entire year. I don't know.
Yeah, I think those are potentially interesting choices. Late Garoppolo appears to be going in round 16, so that's after Desmond Ridder, another possible option. The player I'm feeling like you're going to force me to at least consider is that we've let this go all the way around, and Kenny Pickett is going to come back to us here.
Yeah. I think we should do it. I don't want to, but I don't feel comfortable any of these other quarterbacks are going to start 16 games, 17 games. I don't feel confident Kenny Pickett is either, because even if he does start week one, like I am kind of expecting, they have a competent backup now, or they think they do, in Mitch Trubisky. And so if Pickett struggles, there's a very real possibility Pickett could sit for a bit. I don't see a lot of scenarios where he doesn't play at least 10 to 12 games this year. When you take him in the first round, you look, Mike Tomlin was there when they took Roethlisberger in the first round. They started in week one. This team typically wins. They have a pretty good roster still. They have a lot of talent on defense. They have good skill position players. I'm thinking they're going to just go with Pickett, and assuming he's not terrible, probably stick with Pickett. That doesn't mean he's going to score fantasy points because he doesn't run a lot. He runs a little.
So Pickett is the selection here in part because I'm not sure if you mentioned it, but Albert O was picked. So we don't have to worry about that. Our other two tight end targets probably will come back to us. So we take Pickett. Moore, another guy that we're interested in, possible that he would come back at the 13-14 turn. That's about where his ADP is for this format. And if he doesn't go in the interim, Sky Moore is available. How are you feeling about sort of where we are running back compared to wide receiver? We've got the 3 backs. We've got the 4 receivers. Are you high enough on Sky Moore to take him and risk Rondale coming through? What do you like for our second pick here? It'll be.
I'm not feeling good about our receivers. I'm fine with our running backs. We have Christian McCaffrey, J.K. Dobbins, and Kenneth Walker. We are already in such a tough spot at QB where we're going to take a 4th. To me, it makes sense to make this a pretty hyper fragile running back build where we're trusting McCaffrey to stay healthy. We're trusting Dobbins to come back and stay healthy. I don't think we need to take more than even like 4 running backs total. I really don't think we need to push running back. So I like the Rondale or the Sky Moore decision there. Either of them would be fine with me, but I want to get another receiver.
And just to give a little bit of a feel, other options here would be guys like Olave, Chase Claypool. I think Sky Moore's upside is far too tantalizing to pass on him for guys that even though Olave drafted very early, even though Chase Claypool multiple years in the league, I guess I'm not as comfortable with their roles actually as Moore's. Now, that's one of those things you say at this point in the season, and then week one opens up and it's MVS, Juju, and McCole Hardman out there with Travis Kelce, and you have to reevaluate kind of what you were looking at. But Sky Moore, the guy, I think someone who could have this monster rookie season, even though he's not one of the first reality wide receivers drafted.
I like that a lot. Shawn, you've been talking about Ritter. I like Ritter. Part of me thinks that with Mariota and London, we've already committed sort of to Mariota playing well enough to be the starter. I don't think it would be a surprise if Mariota started all year. This is a long way of me saying
I like where you're going with this.
A Geno Noah Fant stack on top of all the rest of what we've done is really gross, but would be our fourth quarterback. Potentially 4 starting quarterbacks. They're not good, but they could. There's a scenario where all of them start the bulk of the season. There's also a scenario where Mariota or Pickett miss time. I noticed Mariota and Fields have the same bye. Not the biggest deal in the world, but there's obviously a world where Kenny Pickett is not playing football in that week. So I don't really want to take Ritter on that grounds as well. So I'm starting to think that we should have a Mariota London stack with Atlanta, a Geno Smith and Noah Fant stack with Seattle, and Justin Fields and Kenny Pickett, and that's going to solve our problems.
Very nice. Yes, that's actually not where I thought you were going with it. After you gave me so much trouble with the earlier Seahawks selections. But I do like your point and this idea of having made the bet on Mariota. And so if there's a way that we can pivot off of that and say, now we can take Ritter on some teams because we'll have exposure to both of those scenarios. I mean, the worst case scenario, obviously, would be that they, more or less split it half and half, or Mariota plays the vast majority of the season, and then they switch to Ritter so late that you don't get the points that you would have needed, and then he's just there in the playoffs. Maybe you get a team through that has him, and then he's in there in the playoffs, and you get those points. But I do think that there is an argument for taking a different rookie QB in this situation. I thought maybe you were going to go with Matt Corral. We have Christian McCaffrey. They're playing the Carolina Panthers. Sorry, they are the Carolina Panthers. They're going to be playing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in week 17. Now, we don't have Buccaneers on our roster, but there's a scenario where the Buccaneers wouldn't have to even shoot out to have a decent lead on the Panthers late, and we get a 15 reception game from Christian McCaffrey. But really, that's a little bit irrelevant from the perspective of if we went with Corral, we would be looking for him to win that battle somewhat early. And maybe, Bennett, I'm seeing this through the lens of what I want to happen, but it sounds like the Panthers beat reporters are already sort of preparing the fans for Darnold to not be the starter. And you would imagine that they're getting their signals from the Panthers front office there.
The reason I wasn't really thinking about Corral is we didn't take DJ Moore on this roster. I think I can't get my head around the Matt Corral upside case without then being way over DJ Moore. So in this type of situation, I mean, we can still take Matt Corral, but I certainly wasn't thinking through him there, largely because it seems fun to get him onto the back end of a stack that includes DJ Moore, probably even more so than Christian McCaffrey. But I like where your head's at. I think we can go that route. Noah Fant does go, so my dream of a Seahawks super stack with Geno Smith, Ken Walker, and Noah Fant is dead. I assume Noah Fant was one of the 2 tight ends you said that we liked. I know the other one for sure is Gerald Everett.
The other one is Gerald Everett. The sad note here for listeners is that Ronald Jones goes. He would have been a fun 4th running back.
It's all right. We already have 3. We have enough.
Rondell's still there. Kenneth Gainwell, someone we can look at late. He's been one of our focused players. Yeah, we're sort of screaming toward the Gerald Everett slot. He's the 2nd highest tight end still available, and so we're going to be needing some tight ends. Evan Ingram, I think, an interesting play if you believe that Trevor Lawrence can turn things around at all. So he would be a potential 3rd tight end for this team, but we're going to only get to make 2 picks here at this turn.
I think Rondell goes 1 pick before us. It's been one of those drafts. So I think it's Everett. I was really hoping for a Rondell Everett turn. We almost took Rondell at the 12:02. He goes at the 13:10. 20 picks later, 1 pick before we were up again. So
I usually look at this though as serendipity, and that it's going to leave us with
get
the
your
better
optimism
selection
out of here
in the end. And so Gerald Everett now.
Shawn, who has never tilted before, just stays optimistic. You're like so zen about it. It's maddening sometimes.
Well, I feel like this is going to be the tournament champion team. Been drafted weirdly and lovingly at this juncture. The queue is kind of ugly at this point. It consists of Geno Smith, DJ Chark, and Kenneth Gainwell, and that's in part because I stopped putting players in there in the anticipation of just taking Rondell Moore. We could go with Everett and Ingram and get those 3 tight ends for the build and not have to get any of the super late guys. I think the only other tight end that interests me at all is Trey McBride, and while I do think that his long-term upside is gigantic still, I mean, it's a little bit of a convoluted situation.
I'm very comfortable with the 2 tight end strategy. Again, I would love to use these additional picks on quarterbacks where possible. I think we need to take 6 at this point. I'm just kidding. But I think Gainwell's a sharp pick. I was also looking at Rashaad White. It seems like a decent enough time to grab our 4th running back. I'm certainly in on Gainwell if that's where, or I guess if you have Geno Smith at the top of the queue, if you're gonna make the Geno Smith. I think we wait on Smith or Corral, take our 4th QB later. So we did go Rashaad White as a late pivot there. You had mentioned the Week 17 matchup, the Bucs and the Panthers. We have Christian McCaffrey as well. White, we really believe in as having this 3-down profile. If something were to happen to Fournette, could be a truly huge piece, and that would be a pretty fantastic setup in a lower number of a build with fewer running backs overall. We still have this potential for Rashaad White to be pretty massive.
We do, and I'm saying this mostly jokingly, but we have that Week 17 scenario where Rashaad White gets 3 early touchdowns and then forces Christian McCaffrey to catch 15 late passes. So
I'm holding you to that.
Okay, good.
That wasn't a joke. So you still have Geno Smith at the top of the queue. I only brought him up because I thought, Smith Fant would be a thing. Was Fant the other? Trey McBride's the other tight end that you were looking at with Everett? Earlier you mentioned there were 2 tight ends left.
Right. Well, no, Fant and Everett were the 2 guys at that point, but then at the last turn, I was arguing for Everett and Evan Ingram.
Right.
You didn't want to take that second tight end right there.
Yeah, I pretended like you didn't bring up Evan Ingram. We moved on from that.
And so I've been playing a little bit with the roster construction explorer to see how comfortable it is with your move of taking only the 2 tight ends. And if we're going to go with a 4 QB approach, which again, there are some concerns with that. Then the 2 tight end does look to be a way of balancing that out. We took the tight end early in Darren Waller. I mean, I think we're betting here on Everett being, I don't know. I keep going back. I'm not completely sure why he goes there, right? Because Keenan Allen and Mike Williams in and of themselves, I mean, those are not the wide receivers that shut out a tight end if that tight end can play at all. So, I mean, that's the part that we'll see. We got a little bit of a run there with Everett once Russell Wilson got healthy at the end of the season. But, I mean, the reason Everett is on his 3rd team is that he has not been not only not a star,
he had that game where
not a starter. So,
yeah, he had that game where he fumbled twice, including once right at the goal line, and then also had a pass go off his hands at the goal line and get intercepted. I'm pretty sure he should have had 2 short touchdowns and instead created 2 different types of turnovers and then fumbled elsewhere on the field, all in the same game. It was a remarkable achievement. One of the great escapes of the 2021 season for any player.
Now that you bring that up, I do remember that. It was, that one was tough. You don't wish that on anybody.
Ingram goes. I was actually, if he would have swung all the way back around, going to entertain it. I don't think McBride solves any questions. It's one of those things where I'm with you on the roster explorer in most cases, but obviously you have to adjust, right? And so it's going to be relative to the individual players. I don't think McBride solves our issues. And at this point, because we have Waller on the roster, I feel like we can tell ourselves that Waller is going to be good enough that we can get by with 2 tight ends. That's a possible outcome for the season, right?
It is, and I don't want to get you too excited about this ludicrous build, but in the tiny sample, I won't even tell you how many teams, but the current construction that we have going here with the early tight end, only 2 tight ends and 4 potential quarterbacks, 23% win rate. So
I told you. This was my plan all along, Shawn.
Ben's evil genius is coming through, and we're gonna win about a quarter of these.
What was the size of the sample? Now I have to know.
Oh, it was 13 teams. Is that a lot?
I was thinking it was under 100. I didn't think it was 13. That's fantastic. Well, look, we're trailblazers. This is a new strategy. We can name it something. That's the big thing. You got to have names for everything now, Shawn. Everyone wants to be like Zero RB. We will call this super fragile quarterback elite tight end.
I just wish Gino would get picked at this point so that we could conclusively go.
Why is Robbie Anderson's name on the chart ROBBIE? Isn't it ROBBY?
Well, I don't know the answer to that. I can't tell if this is a situation where the player is having fun with people or lost a bet, or if that's actually how his name is spelled now. That is what shows up, I think, currently on his Twitter. And I don't know how I know that, since you wouldn't think that would be something that I know. Also, it's how it shows up now on the Carolina Panthers roster, or at least it did yesterday at this juncture. So
what?
Maybe that's
Robbie Anderson plays like 7 years and then decides he's going to be ROBBIE instead of ROBBY.
I like it. So then we do actually.
Is that what happened with William Fuller? I keep seeing William Fuller in all these draft rooms now. I mean, Does William Fuller stay healthier? Because I'll support the name change there if he could just stay on the field.
Yeah. We have 45 seconds at the 15-11. Have you spent any time looking at the picks recently?
No, none. Kenneth Gainwell's still there. We almost took him last time, so I'm definitely comfortable with him. There's another player that's still there that we almost took last time. He's a quarterback, and you've been praying for him to go. But we also have Corral as an option. I did like that take. I say we keep pushing quarterback.
Okay. Do you have any interest in David Bell or Wan'Dale Robinson at this pick?
Yeah. David Bell. Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean,
so we'll take some David Bell. RotoViz headquarters has been very excited, Ben, that the Cleveland Browns are not running from it. They're not trying to lower expectations. They are flat out calling him Jarvis Landry.
Right.
Which means he's going to have like 100 receptions as a rookie.
Right. That's why I got so excited about him as opposed to Wan'Dale. I like Wan'Dale, but we're basically hearing the quick upside case for David Bell is something that they are believing can happen. They're entertaining as a very strong possibility. So love that pick there.
And just looking a little bit here at the ADP.
Oh, Jacoby Myers is there, Shawn.
What number do you place him now in the Patriots pecking order since they've added?
Obviously one
still. Okay.
We don't have to take him. You are not a Jacoby Myers fan. That is Adam Thielen 2.0. You put some respect on his name. This guy has earned playing time in multiple seasons where they didn't start him with playing time and has earned targets very well in throughout his NFL sample of reps. So how about that?
I do like that. If we had selected Mac Jones, I would have to let you have all of the Patriots wide receivers. We are going to run out of clock. We're going to take Kenneth Gainwell there. And again, we have the advantage of having faded the most important position in this format. But as a result now, our running backs are Christian McCaffrey, J.K. Dobbins, Ken Walker, Rashaad White, and Kenny Gainwell.
Which some listeners will think isn't that good, but for us is what you would call an elite running back room. I think we are comfortably done at running back. We have 4 more picks. Our wide receivers are Jamar Chase, A.J. Brown, Jalen Waddle, Drake London, Sky Moore, David Bell. We've only taken 6. 3 are rookies. We're perhaps a little bit more comfortable with that than we should be. Darren Waller and Gerald Everett at tight end. And then there's another position, and Justin Fields and Marcus Mariota and Kenny Pickett. They're all in red, which is typically not a good sign on the draft board, all colored in red. I think that means that we had to have done something wrong.
So we're looking here at adding to the wide receiver position. Jamison Crowder, I think, still very interesting. Wan'Dale, I would like. Corral, a 17th round ADP. Geno Smith, 19th round. Obviously, there's no guarantee Smith goes at all. If we got pushed back into a situation where Ritter was the guy left, even though we explained why that this might not be the roster to take him with, would that in some ways elevate your comfort level for the team overall?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely comfortable to essentially handcuff your quarterback. Like you said, there's a lot of ways it can play out. I think the one that you said where Mariota is actually sort of good, but the team's not particularly good. And then we get to the shootout portion of this larger Superflex contest, and we need Mariota, and they decide that they're going to get some looks at Ritter late in the year. It kind of feels like the most likely scenario. I mean, not necessarily the Mariota being good thing, but Mariota playing a good chunk of the year and Ritter playing when it matters. Feels like pretty close to the most likely scenario. Mariota getting maybe 10 or 12 starts and then Ritter starting the final 5 games or 7 games. But I'm still hoping we don't have to go that route necessarily, especially because Fields and Mariota have the same bye. We'll be, I mean, I don't know how important week 14 will be, but I would prefer not to take 4 quarterbacks and have 3 of them have the same bye. That doesn't seem like a winning strategy.
Now, I had mentioned Corral. He's the QB we actually think has a decent chance to win the starting job early. I think as early as week 1. Obviously, I've been overly optimistic on this class the whole way, so maybe more middle of the road or conservative Stealing Bananas listeners will want to consider my bias there or just my track record on this class. But another QB who perhaps has even a higher ceiling is also still available. How do you look at Corral versus Malik Willis? And we talk about Malik Willis. If there were ever a team where we actually wanted to draft him for this format, it would be this one.
What's the bold case for him playing this year?
Well, Ryan Tannehill has a playoff game caliber for performance in the first 2 or 3 weeks, while Willis absolutely dominates in practice. And they decide that, as opposed to what the Kansas City Chiefs did, where they had a very good season that year with Alex Smith, but they don't win the Super Bowl. They don't have the firepower at QB in the playoffs. They lose a game there that if they had made the decision midseason to go with Patrick Mahomes, they might have won. We might be talking about the Chiefs having an extra Super Bowl. Maybe the Titans pull that trigger and get him out there. As is the case with all of these guys, including someone like Sam Howell, part of the case does require the player to go out there and look very good during training camp.
That makes sense. I just have a hard time with it with Tannehill, who I think will get every opportunity to be the starter for the entirety of this year. They have a big decision with him this offseason. They can get out of his contract, but I think there's a decent chunk, maybe about $10 million of dead money. Don't quote me on that. And so my concern is essentially they want to know if they want to keep him through 2023 as well. There's void years on his contract, 2024, 2025. It's tough with all these quarterbacks because the fact that they fell to the 3rd round, or in Howell's case, the 5th, we were a little bit higher on them in the fantasy community, but there's a lot of scenarios where these teams just draft these guys to be pure backups, which is what we've seen from similarly drafted quarterbacks in that range in recent years. I mean, just look at 2021. Kyle Trask went in that range. Kellen Mond went in that range. Davis Mills did as well, and Davis Mills got on the field and played all right. But you're talking about Trask and Mond, 2 players that, didn't even sniff the field, obviously. Playing behind veterans, kind of similar to Tannehill. I unfortunately think that's the case for Willis this year. As much upside as you might have in fantasy, it's just really hard to see scenarios where they move away from their very high-priced quarterback who they have signed to this really big deal.
Yeah, I think that is the case. That's one of the reasons why I do like Corral. I just think he wins the job there. I think that potentially the difference between some of these guys is that, even going in, and Kyle Trask played very well in his final year in college, but there just wasn't the physical upside in terms of the mobility, the opportunity to affect the game. Lamar Jackson goes, they're at the end of the 1st round. And so that's obviously different than going in round 3 or round 5, but he pushes his way onto the field. Russell Wilson pushes his way onto the field. The disappointing thing here is that Matt Corral does go,
as does Malik Willis. So Darnold and Corral got stacked together by one drafter. They were kind of doing the thing we were discussing with Mariota and Ritter. I guess I'm not as concerned about the bye weeks. I'm kind of overstating probably the concern there. If you wanted to go Ritter, but we do still have Geno Smith out there. If you believe in Geno Smith, I think now is the time. You want to talk about a roster when we need a guy. Geno Smith, MVP.
I think that we can get him at the 19-20 turn.
Okay.
Or I guess the question, and we are on the clock, we have 40 seconds, is if you're willing to pass on really the 3 options here in Smith, Garoppolo, and Ritter, and to take a couple of wide receivers if you have wide receivers that you like. I like Jamison Crowder. have selected him in
Let's
the
do
league with Connor, again,
Crowder,
because of that
Crowder's
game.
a good pick.
And one of the things, Ben, here that's kind of fun, you can go to the NFL Stat Explorer and look at his player page, look at him in half PPR. And one of the things I think people get overly concerned about with some of the possession receivers is that maybe they're high floor, low ceiling. They don't think there's enough volatility. You pull up Jamison Crowder, you'll be surprised by the number of wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 finishes he has over the last 3 seasons. Obviously, most of those were not last year, where he had some injuries and obviously the Jets were bad. But there's a ton of volatility in his profile. There's a ton of volatility in Tyler Boyd's profile. If that's something that is important to you, then you're going to get that with that type of player still. So don't let that part of it push you off of him.
And we get the correlation with Chase that we were thinking about with the Gabriel Davis pick several rounds earlier, the Week 17 matchup. Jamison Crowder's going to catch 10 passes against the Bengals.
I like it. The unfortunate development is that passing at the 17-18 turn was not going to work, because passing even just at the 17-11 did not work for Desmond Ridder. He goes 17-12. So we're back up here. You make some bad decisions when you get out there and you read the puff pieces on your favorite players, but Wan'Dale Robinson has been everything that the Cardinals were hoping for in Rondale Moore in the first 1 or 2 practices the Giants have had. So do we want to look at him here? Do you have a different?
I'm fine with that. The pick for me would be Geno, probably, and then hope that Wan'Dale makes it back. But we can wait on Geno for 19-20. But with Ridder going and Corral and Willis this last couple rounds, I'm curious to see if Geno will make it back. Where's the thesis for Garoppolo? So you mentioned Garoppolo. Oh, Baker went. That's why you didn't mention Baker. Okay. I was going to ask.
One of the elements here is that we do have 3 quarterbacks. And so I don't think that getting the 4th one is an absolute must. I would have taken Geno, except we were at 3 seconds, and that was right when you said but. And so then I clicked back to Wan'Dale, and then you said the other. So we do have Wan'Dale there. We are kind of.
Don't lie. You just wanted Wan'Dale Robinson.
Well, I did want Wan'Dale. That was my vote. So I don't know. This receiving core now is like one of our fired up 0 RB receiving groups, even though we have McCaffrey, Jamar Chase, Brown, Waddle, London, Moore, Bell, Crowder, and Robinson. I think we're going to score enough points at these other positions. Darren Waller stays healthy, looking very good. I don't know. I guess I think Marcus Mariota can do it, right? That's one of the reasons why I was okay with the early risks. I mean, I like Desmond Ridder too. Drafted him in a number of early drafts and rookie drafts. But if we're going to be in this situation playing without the early QBs, I want it to be somebody, number one, I like. Marcus Mariota, I think one of the best people out there in terms of NFL players. He's had a hard time staying healthy. We have to consider that as a potential negative. And yet at the same time, because they have Ridder behind him, I really do feel like the Atlanta Falcons are not going to be as careful with him as the Titans had to be at times. And again, it's not any criticism of them because he was basically already hurt. I mean, you can't go out there and throw him into these situations where he gets even more injured when he's got these other problems and can't play for you, or you're risking his health, all of those types of things. But because of that, he was not able to be unleashed as a runner. I think that his rushing upside with the Falcons could be pretty dynamic. And within the context of this tournament where we have Fields and Mariota, both of those guys that go out there on Sundays and run, the points are going to be there.
So if you just talked yourself into us having the best QBs in the league, is that what I caught there?
No, I think that the team with Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, and Deshaun Watson to start probably still has us trumped, but I do feel okay about our situation.
They have us trumped very narrowly.
It is narrow.
Is there, if we're not going to go with the fourth QB, is there a third tight end that you like? I'm good with the 5 running backs. We have 8 receivers now. Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, AJ Brown, Drake London, Sky Moore, David Bell, Jamison Crowder, and Wan'Dale Robinson. I really like Crowder as well for our build because we do have the 4 rookies. We're totally fine with that, but there is obviously some, playing time concern, and the reality is rookies don't necessarily play 100% of the snaps the entirety of the season, and we see them kind of ramp up and tend to perform better later. So to get that 4th receiver in Crowder that we feel like can be, a high reception guy, you were talking about the volatility of him. I also like the fact that, he has a solid floor, but basically in that Cole Beasley role, and Beasley had plenty of usable weeks over the last several years, I think is nice for this 8 receiver build. I don't think we have to take another receiver. We have 2 picks left. We have the 5 running backs. I don't think we have to take another running back. So we have this question of, do we want a 3rd tight end? Do we want, the 4th quarterback discussion? If Geno Smith comes back, do we want a 6th running back? Do we want a 9th receiver? I think we can go all 4 of those directions. I don't feel like we're necessarily closed off at any position. McBride did just go, so that narrows tight end even more. I don't know if there's a tight end we can take.
Yeah, I guess that's probably the last tight end I would be seriously considering. Adam Troutman, if he's healthy, perhaps score some points for the Saints, but Landry deepens that wide receiver group. If he's available, you would expect Alvin Kamara to catch a bunch of passes. The name here that is maybe a little bit interesting is one that you've mentioned to me at times, because there's the potential for sort of a, not really even a secondary breakout, because the actual breakout hasn't happened, but OJ Howard gets to go to he had a good season in there, but OJ Howard goes to the Bills. That would be in many ways a similar kind of bet to Gerald Everett with the Chargers, other than just Howard's going to be the backup, obviously, but there'd be potential for him to get out there on the field. Again, that's a game that you're interested in playing. And one of the things I like about playing that Bengals-Bills game is to try and play it in ways that maybe aren't going to be played as much. And so that would allow
Jamison Crowder, 10 catches, and OJ Howard, 2 touchdowns. We'll be
perfect.
reasonable.
That's perfect. The other name here, Ben, that you have to consider, and I put Will Fuller into the queue for you. He may not play in 2022, so that would decrease us by another roster spot. But LaVisca is still there. Sam Howell is still there. Jimmy Garoppolo is still there.
A lot of names worth taking. Your boy Kendrick Bourne just went 1 pick before us, though, so we can't take him, unfortunately.
And the running backs I was interested in, which I wasn't that yet even with them, but Sony Michel and Kenyon Drake go in this round. So I'm kind of with you. I think that we're off of running back. Wide receiver would probably be Chenault. We're probably off tight end, although I'm okay with Howard if that's a play you'd like to make. Geno is available here.
Let's take Geno.
You like that better than Garoppolo getting traded to one of these teams?
I don't think he's going to get traded to Seattle just because they're in the same division, but it's, I suppose, possible. Where do you think he fits? Carolina, maybe?
Well, they've made the interesting claim that they don't think that he's an upgrade on Sam Darnold. And I would contest that, but maybe that, I don't know if you can say that and then trade for him, because you're going to have to mend some fences right away. So we do take Geno Smith there. It was in round 19. Who do you like between LaVisca Chenault and LaVisca Chenault for the 20th pick?
I do love that you were right that Geno made it back, but Gardner Minshew went in the interim. Nobody is on your bandwagon that Geno Smith is going to start for Seattle. We might have just gotten a 17-game starter there in the 19th round. Let's go Visca. One more receiver. Let's load it up. I am on board with Visca. Like, unironically, this is ridiculous that he goes in the 20th round behind a lot of these other guys. Very good prospect. Got injured in his rookie year. Came back and actually flashed, but in a very small sample. He was building towards that late rookie season breakout. He really was. misses some games, comes back and has a couple decent games. Point is, he missed some time late in the year when he was actually starting to build up. Year 1 was odd. Year 2 was extremely odd for everyone in the Urban Meyer offense and the Urban Meyer team. You can write him off completely if you want, but Shawn, this is the closest thing that I have felt to two guys that you were on in drafts that we did together, either against each other or what have you. I know in a dynasty league, you are still taking Davante Adams after 2 years. And for people who don't remember, Davante Adams looked like the worst receiver in football after 2 years. He was the only non-efficient receiver with Aaron Rodgers. They had Jordy Nelson at the time. They had other guys. Adams was playing some and not performing. And he was going incredibly late. He was incredibly cheap in dynasty. And you believed that there was still something there because he had an incredible prospect profile. And then Tyler Boyd is the other one I've mentioned in this argument as well before, where we got 2 really poor seasons and everyone wrote him off. And you, because of his prospect profile, felt that it was a worthwhile pick in these types of ranges and these types of spots, checking in the 20th round. I know the Jaguars invested in the receiver core, obviously not in particularly strong names if Visca's ready to truly break out. Is Visca... Are you willing to think of Visca in the same light as I know you did before Davante Adams and Tyler Boyd's third seasons?
I guess I'm a little bit more nervous because the Jaguars are so clearly wanting to go in a different direction. But my argument would be that as we get closer to the season and people realize what the Jaguars wide receiver core actually still is, he's going to rise in price. Or if he gets moved, he's going to rise in price. And it's an interesting way to play a Trevor Lawrence breakout, I think, too. And so in some ways, you're actually getting a little bit of both of the bounce backs or the post hype or whatever you want to call it with those guys. If Lawrence comes out the season and plays well, I think that'll help Christian Kirk. It might make Zay Jones somebody who has a little bit of weekly viability in really deep leagues or for DFS, that kind of thing. But the player you would expect to benefit the most would be the guy with the highest ceiling. And I still think that probably is Shenault. Now, there are very real concerns in that not just in terms of the way that some of the targets went. It didn't really matter what role they played him in last year. When he was outside, he wouldn't get open. When he was the underneath guy, he wasn't targeted in the same way that practice squad types of players were targeted when they were in that same role. And then when he did get open, he didn't catch the ball. And so you have to take that into consideration, and you have to adjust what you think a receiver is going to do, what a player is going to do with those first 2 years of information. But in round 20, I still like the play. I mean, you're looking at other players drafted in this round that, I mean, realistically, I just don't think make any difference to their teams at all.